here. So today we have Eric Seal and Emily Barzak from T. Rowe Price joining us. They're going to be talking about the next wave of advice, really focusing on financial advisor coaching of clients. I'm going to introduce Eric, and then he's going to introduce Emily. Eric is Vice President and Regional Sales Consultant at T. Rowe Price, where he supports financial advisors in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Been in the financial services industry over 17 years, started at T. Rowe in 2008 and was a financial advisor prior to that. He has a BS in economics and finance from East Stroudsburg University of Pennsylvania. He's married. He has 2 children. He lives in Howard County, Maryland. He enjoys cooking, coaching his children, and is a huge fan of New York sports. So you got some friends on this call here, Eric. So with that, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Sebastian, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing us on the call on this dreary Tuesday here in Maryland. I'm sure it's the same where you all are in Pennsylvania, maybe West Virginia as well. But happy to be on the call to kind of introduce this next wave, or this concept of next wave of advice. You know, one of the things that initially drew me to T. Rowe Price 16 years ago was their client-first approach and their long-term investment excellence. So T. Rowe Price dates back to 1937, and over the last 87 years, we've grown from a very small Baltimore-based firm, managing the wealth of local families, to what we are today, which is a $1.5 trillion global asset manager. But that commitment to investment excellence while keeping our client interests first is what really helps T. Rowe Price stand apart from other top-tier asset managers, particularly during times of heightened market volatility. And it's essentially what is our brand. So as you all kind of think about your own individual practices, what is your brand, or what helps differentiate you from that robo-advisor or even some of the human competition in your own markets? How are you connecting with clients and prospects to not only attract and maintain assets, but for those that focus on planning for their clients, making sure that those plans get implemented? Because what we know through research is that half of the clients who pay their hard-earned money for a formal plan implement less than 20% of those recommendations. So our hope with today's webinar is to make you a more attractive advisor that clients and prospects want to work with, and increase the likelihood that those clients take action on the plans that you develop for them. So to do that, I'm super excited to introduce my colleague, Emily Barzak, who will walk through our next wave of advice program, which outlines coaching with respect to being a differentiator for your practice. We'll also highlight some of the tools and resources that T. Rowe Price can offer you to incorporate into your client meetings, and why this will be a crucial step going forward to help you stand out from competition, both real and artificial. So just Emily, a quick intro. She's one of our insights leaders at T. Rowe Price and a frequent keynote speaker at industry events. She helps develop a lot of the content that T. Rowe Price delivers in terms of practice management. And she works with a lot of the financial professionals to help them improve their business outcomes and work more effectively with investors. Emily spent over 20 years advising and training business leaders from many fields, and brings a really strong clinical and social science background to her work, having received her BS in psychology from Towson University here in Maryland, and MS in counseling psychology from Loyola University in Maryland. Along with her undergrad and master's work, she holds a few professional certifications from Brown University, Hogan Assessment Systems, and Fierce Conversations. On top of all of that, she's a yogini in her spare time, which I just learned is a term for a female yoga instructor, where she's earned a 300-hour certification. So I can't think of anyone better suited to help teach us about coaching today than Emily the yogini. So Emily, I'll hand it over to you.
I'm so impressed. I don't think that anybody has incorporated yogini into my intro. So thank you, Eric. Pleasure to be with you all this morning. And I just want to give you a heads up that I am joining video audio through my iPad. So as I make eye contact this way, but I have also joined through my laptop to share my screen. So if you see my eyes move over, I'm not trying to stay up on the current news or social on my phone or anything like that. I am dividing my attention between you all and the presentation. So before I share my screen and get into the content for the next 50-ish minutes, I'd like to begin with sharing a quote. With all of the presentations that I do, I like to open up with either a story, a fun fact. I was in Texas last week in Fort Worth, and so I had a little bit of trivia. I go down rabbit holes when I travel, so I had a little bit of trivia about the stockyards in Fort Worth, which, interestingly enough, had once been referred to as the Wall Street of the West. If you're interested in knowing more about that, you can ping me later. But I do like to open with a story or a quote that I think represents the sentiment behind what I'll be sharing with you all, and hopefully the insights that you gleaned from our time together. So the quote for you all today is "Gradually, then suddenly." Anybody heard that? Raise of hands for those I can see. Okay. So the quote originates, at least according to my research, to The Sun Also Rises, a Hemingway book from years past. But it is also a quote and a saying that had been used quite frequently around the '08 crisis, the great financial crisis, and other things relating to finance and the markets globally. But if we go back to the origin story with Hemingway, there is a scene in The Sun Also Rises where these two friends or gentlemen, they're going to see the running of the bulls in Spain, and one looks at the other and says, "How did you lose all your money? How did you lose your fortune?" And the other replies, he says very simply, "Gradually, then suddenly." So I share that with you all to kind of park in your brain as we move through slides and comments and content, as a reminder to us all that hindsight can, right, offer 20/20 vision. Hindsight can offer aha moments where something changed, and in the moment it felt like it happened like that. But if we kind of do a retrospective, we start to click through, hey, there were mile markers, there were moments along the way where we had signs, and were we paying attention? And we had signs that were pointing us in a certain direction. And so maybe even though the change felt like it happened suddenly, in hindsight, as we do that retro, there were indications along the way that if we had been paying attention, we would have seen that it was pointing us in a different direction than maybe we wanted to go. And that can be applied to business. It can be applied to, obviously, the financial markets. It can be applied to relationships. And so when we look at and we think of this topic of the next wave of advice, there are some mile markers and some indicators that really ask us to pay attention to how this next generation of wealth and this great wealth transfer, the people involved in it, what is changing about them and their expectations of you. And if we make some subtle but significant changes in how we show up, the hope is that we retain the business, we retain the clients, we grow wallet share, and we are able to ride that wave of wealth transfer that is happening now and for the foreseeable future. So that's my intro. Gradually, then suddenly. If you're a note taker, maybe write that down, because these words can trigger memories and moments in this presentation today that may be helpful for you in your next conversation with one of your clients. All right, so I am going to now share my screen and get into these slides. Let me move into present mode. Might take just a moment. Okay, that is not what I want. Those are, let's see. There we go. Okay, let me move back here. Hold on. Okay, Eric, can you just a sound check, visual check? You can hear me okay?
Yep, coming through loud and clear.
Okay, and the slideshow you can see as well.
Yep,
Awesome.
presentation is up.
Okay, all right. I do want to make sure I move through all the content. That said, because we have a great size today, if there is a question or a comment, an insight that you want to share for the benefit of the group, feel free to come off of mute, and Eric and Sebastian And Jennifer, because the four of you are up on my iPad right now and I can see you, if I happen to miss somebody coming off of mute, feel free to interrupt me so that we can make sure we encourage the engagement and clarity where it's needed. Awesome. Thank you both. Thank you all. Okay, so here we go. These are the three main buckets that we'll cover with our time together. What is coaching? As Eric sort of spoke to in his intro and opening comments, we'll get into this word and this topic of coaching, dig into what exactly we're talking about and kind of level set. And then moreover, and for me, perhaps most importantly, like, what do we do with it? Like, how do you incorporate it? And again, the theme there is, small changes, subtle changes, sort of looking for that butterfly or ripple effect. We're not asking or encouraging of making any seismic changes to your behavior or your practice, but there are small but mighty things you can do. And then capping things off with sort of why this matters, that big W, capital W, of why things matter with this. All right, so here's a question for you to chomp on or reflect for just a moment. And if you do have a pen and piece of paper, I would encourage you to just jot down what comes up for you as you ask yourself this question. How many times have you offered good advice that was not followed? This could be professional or personal. I have teenagers, so that happens quite often, that I give advice and nothing is done with it. If there's a recent scenario specific to a client, maybe write down their name, write down a couple words that kind of encompass you dispensing advice, and they didn't take it, right? Okay. Well, as Eric stole one of my stats, so this is meant to be validating. So if you are a person, I'm assuming all of you in this meeting today have had experience with giving advice and it not being followed, both in the professional and the personal realm. This slide right here is meant to validate your experience. You're not alone. And as Eric mentioned, half of clients who pay for a formal financial plan implement fewer than 20% of the recommendations. And then on the right side of what you're viewing, almost 20% of clients do nothing with the plan recommendations at all. So I remember this as like the 50-20-20 rule. So this is research, industry research that just validates, hey, if you are one that you have put together a really solid plan, been excited about it, and your client has done nothing or very little with it, you are not alone in that experience. Your peers and colleagues are encountering similar challenges with plan implementation. Okay. So here's where we get into that word of differentiation and to sort of dig and investigate why are so few clients implementing your recommendations or the recommendations of a financial plan. It is important to take a step back for a moment and kind of look at the context of how our business and industry has evolved. And this is a very high level overview of kind of the progression and where things are trending now, originating sort of in that commission-based stock picker, stock broker was a label title used quite often way back when, to advancing into portfolio modeling and outsourcing some of the investment sleeves of businesses and practices. And now in that bottom right corner, as was mentioned in the open, robo-advising, digital platforms are here. They're here to stay, and they are competition for you all. And for some advisors, looking at it as an actual threat to, like, am I going to have a job? Is this sort of working me out of having a career path? And this is where the differentiation and your knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, what you bring to clients, what you bring to the relationship is your key to differentiating yourself between, the digital platforms and having a live person, a real person as a financial advisor. That is the best way, and in my opinion, kind of the only way to really rise above the lower costs and the perceived similar or same outcome if I'm an individual investor, use a digital platform. And I've had conversations in end client, end investor workshops where I had a woman just explicitly ask me, what is the benefit of working with a financial advisor? I had another person ask me, how do I evaluate their performance and they're doing well and meeting my needs beyond just sort of alpha and making money or keeping steady with sort of their benchmarks. So end investors are curious and in need of something more than what the digital platforms offer. You've got to be really sure about what you bring to the table. And as Eric said, packaging that in a concise and memorable way is really important. Okay, so I'll just get off my soapbox there and progress along. Here's a little bit more with research that's really important to understand and just sort of write down or park in the back of your mind that sort of makes the case for the opportunity. When we look at high earners, Henry is a term that's used often. I think if you don't know what Henry stands for, high earners, not rich yet. So when we look at that cohort of clients, 56% of these highest earners under the age of 50 would like a financial coach. They want a more meaningful connection and deeper relationship. They want to feel motivated, inspired, accountable. They want someone to sort of hold their feet to the fire, or a less extreme sort of metaphor, walking shoulder to shoulder with them along the path. Checking in. How are you doing? Have you been able to follow through on what we talked about in terms of next steps? If not, let me know what I can do to help. What can I take off your plate? They believe that that type of relationship, AKA coaching behaviors, will help them achieve their goals. And if you think for a moment, and I dropped my daughter off in August for freshman year of college. And, when I think about what that experience was like for me and the resources or the lack thereof when I was going away for freshman year, it's quite different. And so the younger generations in a variety of contexts, formal relationships, informal relationships, business relationships, personal relationships, they are used to a different dynamic than previous generations that offers more recognition and validation and support than Gen Xers, boomers, and some of us that fit in sort of that older demographic. And so they bring that experience, which informs their expectations of how they could leverage the expertise of a financial advisor, and what that engagement looks like is very much informed by these other experiences and contexts. So just in your own day-to-day, thinking about how those sorts of dynamics have really changed and what has changed about them can be a useful exercise to then inform some of the slight tweaks that you might make, especially when you're engaging with those that are in younger generations, like millennials, zillennials, and alpha, I think is the newest generation. Okay. So this is our springboard into what is coaching and how do we successfully differentiate. We could spend the next hour plus going round robin talking about what is coaching. What I want us to do and you to do individually before I jump into a bit more of explanation and focus areas for all of you is to think about a relationship in your life, current or past. And it could be, you could categorize it as a coaching relationship or just someone that in your life made a huge difference. They were a coach, they were a mentor, an instructor, but someone that you recall fondly in a positive way, where they kind of helped you step into yourself, realizing goals, realizing potential, whatever it may be. And I want you to take a moment to think about who that person was for you. Hopefully you have someone. And again, encourage you to write down their name, or perhaps there was a phrase that you recall them saying to you that was sort of a turning point or a pivotal moment for you in career or your development? Okay. Now, this is where I will ask for a little bit of audience participation. So could I have one person come off of mute and just share who they wrote down or who they thought of?
I can share.
Thanks, Sebastian. Yeah,
Oh
what'd you
yeah,
come up with?
that college football coach, guy named Barry Streeter at Gettysburg College.
Okay, so why did Barry come to mind?
I just thought of this stupid thing he used to say, and it ended up not being stupid. He would tell this story about back in the old days when, water just didn't come out of the faucet. You'd have to go out to the backyard and pump the water pump to get the water to come out. He would basically just scream, "Pump the pump" in your face, and it was about just don't give up, just keep on fighting a good fight. And it kind of applies to everyday life because stuff's going to come at you and you just kind of keep pushing forward. So that's one thing I always kind of think about. Like I said, sounds kind of dumb and probably weird to some people that weren't there, but that's one thing I always remember.
That's awesome. All right, so I'm going to hold just one more question for you. So is there a recent moment that you can recall where you heard yourself say to yourself, "Pump the pump"?
Yeah. So yeah, we're in the business of recruiting advisors to come to Premier. You win some, you lose some, and we had a week where maybe we lost out on two that we were working on, and it's just, you just got to remind yourself, just keep pushing on. There's more people out there.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And it's not weird, or we all receive those stories from each other in a very positive way, and we know that it's context, right? So I do appreciate the vulnerability of sharing that. And I think that's a memorable quote, like "pump the pump." We may all walk away from this meeting remembering that. So thanks for sharing. This is what you all are looking to accomplish with relationships that matter to you. And certainly within that, your relationships with clients, they matter to you. And you want your clients to walk away having something comparable to "Pump the Pump," right? That they remember, that reminds them of, something that is important, that keeps them tethered, anchored to goals, to their priorities, and that they associate that with you. And that's how you differentiate. As Eric mentioned, right, I'm a yogini. I started practicing yoga many years ago because I had a torn ACL and I couldn't sweat. I couldn't do cardio. And so I went into a hot yoga class. And that led me sort of on a path of learning how to practice it and then teach it and then teach teachers and all of that kind of stuff. But it's important to remember that those moments, right, can really help inform and set us on a path. And you really want to have that positive association. You want your clients to have that positive association with you. So let me not go down that rabbit hole, and let me focus on the fact that we could spend hours talking about each individual story and some of the traits and behaviors that were memorable for you. What I want to offer is there are, by and large, three sort of buckets that we can categorize coaching type behaviors in, and that is what is coming next in the next slide. And actually, before we get to that, here's a high-level definition. I'm not going to read it. You can take it in yourself. I won't read it out loud. What I do want to focus on is a word in the top right corner of the slide, and that is potential. And if nothing else, equate coaching to potential, right? And when you all think of client engagements and people that walk into your offices, quite often, they're not so much connected to potential and possibility. They're connected to what they think is not possible, or what they haven't done, or in graduate school, what we called shoulding all over yourself. What I should have done, what I should do, what I haven't done. And so where you come into play and where coaching comes into play is really switching the tone and the mindset from scarcity, from negativity, into something that is about potential and possibility. balanced with reality, right? Let's establish sort of, and we'll get to this a little later, but it's not sort of pipe dream and unrealistic, but let's assess where we are and let's unlock the potential for you to get to, directionally speaking, like, or targeted, get you exactly where you want to go. So associate coaching with potential. All right, here are the 3 C's of coaching. And if I happen to run into you in my travels in Pennsylvania, in Maryland, or West Virginia, I think is where the geographic location of everybody by and large. If I happen to run into you and you see Emily Barzak on the street and I recognize you, or you call out and say, hey, I was in that call with you. What are the 3 C's of coaching? I would love, 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 love if you would recall these 3 words, right? So lock them in, write them down, lock them to memory, commit them to memory. Curiosity, courage, and compassion. These are the 3 C's of coaching that by and large, most behaviors around coaching fall into these buckets. Moreover, what this offers us is to put us sort of in a mindset, a coaching mindset. If we say these 3 words like pump the pump, coaching, curiosity, courage, and compassion, if we use it sort of like a mantra, right, before we meet with the client, it puts us in the right headspace to show up in a way that helps to unlock the potential and possibility of our clients. And we're going to dive into each one of these a little bit just to make sure that, we have an understanding and we're anchored to what each of these mean and the significance. So beginning with curiosity, and as we move through these, they're just quotes to kind of help bring it to life. So with curiosity, I'm neither especially clever nor especially gifted. I am only very, very curious. So the importance of curiosity is showing up to client conversations and engagement, wanting to understand, seeking to understand versus be understood, right? There's similar quotes and catchphrases that exist out there. But with our best intentions, oftentimes we show up to conversations waiting our turn to speak, waiting our turn to diagnose, and waiting for our turn to prescribe. Now, we are in the business of financial advising, and with that word advice, it can present some risk for us where we diminish our curiosity in the spirit of giving advice. And so what this first C asks you to do is sort of pause, take pause. We got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and get curious, get into that investigative mindset with clients. Next, we have courage. So courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And I know for many of you, you have had tough, uncomfortable conversations with clients. That's a part of it. You have to initiate at times tough and uncomfortable conversations with clients. The courage piece is asking you to continue to lean into that discomfort. When I present and do workshops with advisors, one of the things that emerges always is you all really walk the line at times of being almost a counselor or a therapist, especially when you're working with families or spouses or partners. There are topics that could come up in a conversation with you that don't come up in the household. There could be information that is shared with you that spouses do not share with each other, right? So a part of this coaching approach, a part of what you do necessitates courage. And then the last C, compassion. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Good quote from the Dalai Lama. I'll layer in another quote. I think it is attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This one I think is on the scene and pretty prevalent. And it just tries to capture the sentiment that, you know, oftentimes we can lead with wanting to sort of prove and exert sort of control and power and influence with how much we know. And that really does not leave a lasting impression with people. And it also diminishes our curiosity and our courage because we show up in a way that is all centered around self. So this idea of sitting in someone else's seat, understanding their experience, their perspective, being shoulder to shoulder with them, as opposed to sitting across the table and being toe to toe, we really need to be committed to that. Okay, so those are the 3 C's. Anybody want to come off of mute for a pop quiz and just tell me, in addition to compassion, what were the other 2? Sebastian again.
Curiosity and courage.
Thanks, Josh.
Exactly. Awesome. Yes. So again, please commit these to memory. The 3 C's of coaching: curiosity, compassion, and courage. Great coaches are, did I just freeze? Can you guys hear me? I feel like I froze. Okay, I'm good? Okay.
We can hear you.
All right. Okay, great coaches are often made, not born. I'll draw your attention to the right-hand side of the slide. 1 in 4 business leaders significantly overestimate their coaching skills. So, you know, we're taking this and there's application to us and what we do and the dynamic between you all and clients. We oftentimes overestimate our ability with coaching. And this is not to be intended to be judgmental, right? It's just calling out that we can sort of overrate ourselves. And so because of that, it's really important for us to double down on things like today, right? Taking pause in our day-to-day activities to just sort of have dedicated and focused time that is on our development and the betterment of our efforts and how we show up for our clients, opening ourselves up to new techniques and putting additional tools in our toolbox. And this last one of seeking feedback. So I mentioned, you know, a client, an end investor that had said to me, how do I evaluate an advisor's performance beyond alpha? I mean, she didn't say it in those words, but that was the sentiment. And for me, that was the fact that she was even asking that was a red flag with that advisor. Have you all talked about what does success look like? How, client, do you define it? And am I tracking, right? And as advisors, with the dynamic that you have with the clients, it's really important to be very intentional. And here's an application of curiosity and courage, right? Of asking for feedback. How am I doing? How are you evaluating if this relationship is working well for you, right? And making sure that you have that understanding and that alignment. Okay, so now we get into how do we incorporate coaching into our practice. So here's some tactical things, like just specifically, like specific tranches or cohorts within your practice that you could focus on. So really starting with like pinpointing who within your book of business would benefit from some of these slight changes that we're talking about and implementing some of the coaching mindset and behaviors into your interactions. So the first one, and I'll go one by one very briefly, right? That Henry category, wealthy investors under the age of 50. So really targeting a younger subset of your client base could be a great place to start. Investors going through a major life event could be another cohort to really focus on. Here is where, you know, in my role at T. Rowe, one of my areas of expertise is women in wealth, women in investing, women in money. And so this is a particular area with going through a major life event where I plug opportunities to engage with women specifically who may be going through death of a spouse or a divorce. There's opportunity there. I would also say if you don't sort of have a framework in your practice, you know, there are commonalities in the life cycle and life experience and life stages for people. So it can be really beneficial to just sort of pay attention to when you know that you have clients whose kids are college age or they're becoming grandparents, right? Really paying attention to some of those mile markers and milestones for your clients. Those can be great opportunities to sort of plug in some of the coaching efforts when people are going through change and transition. I've already sort of spoken to women, investors already working with a financial advisor. So, you know, here, one of the ways to apply this is we're not talking about, as I mentioned, seismic changes. We're talking about slight shifts in conversation, in tone, in how you're showing up. So this can work with clients that you already have, right? This is not, I already have a book of business. I've applied one sort of philosophy, mindset, methodology to them. And so maybe I will do coaching, but this is only going to apply to new clients. This is applicable to all. So think about others that are outside of these recommendations that you think would really benefit from, you know, the 3 C's of coaching. And then when we get into this grow, I feel like I'm choppy a little bit. Am I okay? You guys are hearing me okay?
You're freezing up a little bit.
Okay.
It's fine though.
It's not
Okay.
super nose. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Apologies for that. Okay. This I'm really excited about, and hopefully I don't freeze mid-sentence. Hold on, let me see. Okay. So this I'm really excited about because this is a model for how to approach conversations. It's an acronym, so big on acronyms, big on things that are easy to remember, like the 3 C's, like gradually then suddenly. So the GROW model, I'll intro high level right now, and then the subsequent slides are devoted to going through each letter one at a time, just so we have a comprehensive understanding of how this looks, feels, and sounds like. So this is a conversational model. And what I'll tell you about it is that a lot of organizations across many, many industries use the GROW methodology internally for their people managers and for their leaders in coaching conversations that they have with associates. Okay, so goal is G, reality R, options O, and will W. At a very high level, what this can sound like very simply is, what are your goals? What are your priorities? Where are you now with pursuing and accomplishing those goals or priorities? What are the options for you to get to doing? That's very simply put. And did I break up a whole lot as I went through that, Eric? Or is good? Okay. Very simply put, that's how this can sound conversationally. So let's start with G. So these are some prompts. Feel free to jot these down or take a picture if that visual cue is helpful. But these are some of the ways that you can bring to life asking about goals and priorities. So what are you looking to achieve? How will you know when you achieved it? I love that. How will you know when you've gotten there? That can lead to really interesting insights from people. Again, sort of along that how path, how do you want to feel after you've achieved or accomplished your goal? What would you, bringing a specific, and then I just froze, that's a lovely way of freezing there. What would you like to have accomplished by the end of our time today? That can be one in a meeting at the outset of the meeting, as opposed to starting with your agenda and the topics that you'd like to cover. Ask them, like, what would you like to say you've accomplished or discussed today with me? That can be a really powerful question, and it can take some courage to be willing to ask that, because it could mean that you start out in a different place than where you thought you were with the meeting, right? some openness and some curiosity and some courage is required to be willing to sort of have them set the pace and the tone and the topic of the meeting. Any questions about goals before I move on to reality? Okay. The next one is reality. So here's how we're going to bring it to life. Here's how this could sound. What have you done so far? What haven't you been able to work out? Why do you feel this way? What is behind this goal? What is so important about this goal for you? In bold, this is a great question, leads to a lot of insights with clients. I would absolutely recommend, if you don't layer this into conversation, that you start practicing this as soon as you can. This is what is true for you about the role money played in your childhood. That can be incredibly informative and can really point to priorities, to goals. It can also point to certain behaviors that maybe for you as an advisor have an aha moment of why they haven't implemented some of the recommendations that you've made in the plan. It can be an incredibly insightful question to ask. It also, when working with spouses or partners, can be really interesting to ask this of each of them. And for the couple, can reveal potentially some of the challenges that they've experienced as they navigate through financial decisions together. Okay. This slide does plug our financial behavior assessment, so that is something that we can follow up with. If you're curious about that, please let Eric or myself know, and we can do that as a follow-up. Okay. The next one, options, and this is one where the directive from me with this one is that nothing is off the table. When you are exploring options, you can go with the outlandish, right? You have the magic wand. Anything is possible. It's really important.
Is she frozen for anyone else?
I'm here. You guys there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I'm just gonna go to my laptop now. It's part of the reason why I always log in twice. Okay. So with options, did you all hear me when I was saying sort of the outlandish, right? Open things up.
Now, can you repeat, Emily?
Okay. So with options, it hasn't logged me out, sorry. So with options, it's really important to kind of keep everything open and on the table. This is not the phase. It can be very easy to kind of get into the option phase and equate that with like, we have to commit to something. And the caution here, or the directive here, is when you are exploring options, what are the different paths that you could take, that we could take to get you to your goal from where you're starting now? It's really important to just consider everything. And as we consider and explore what the options are, nothing is off the table. It really helps to kind of free the brain, open up problem solving, creative thinking, and just resist the tendency when you explore options to go immediately into solution mode. Does that make sense? Okay. This is especially important when you are working with a client that is going through some sort of transition or change, or part of what you're discussing, part of what's driving some of the goals are related to a transition or change in their life. And I say that because when we are, as human beings, going through change and transition, our stress level goes up, right? Especially if those are some unforeseen or unfortunate changes or transitions. And so it's really important when you're looking at this option phase for folks that are in that high stress level place, that you help to explore all options that can really be of service to them, because their brain quite literally may not be able to see all of the options available to them. This is where we go back to equating coaching to possibility and potential, right? And that becomes really important for people that stress level is high, they've got a lot of change and transition in front of them, and they may not be able to see all of the options that are available. Now, the other O that's here for this third step is around obstacles. And this is really important to understand. All right, so we've outlined a few different options here. Now let's talk about what are some of the obstacles that are present for you today that would really inhibit your ability to pursue some of these options and to take the steps necessary. This for you all can be incredibly insightful and reveal areas of where you could take something off of their plate, right? This is where you could say, okay, so what does a communication plan look like for us? Like if your next step or option is to do A, B, and C, how can I help you? How can I sort of be that accountability or partner or person that really helps to sort of keep you trending in the direction that you know you want to go? So as important as it is to explore the options, it also is really an opportunity in this third step to talk about some of the roadblocks that may be very real and present for clients that could inhibit their ability of taking the next step. Are we good with this one? This one required a little bit more time. And then the last piece of things, just click in here, is step 4. And that's all right. So what will you do? What will you do now? Putting some, time binding it can be really important. By when will you do it? How will we know? Again, another how question. How will we know when you've done it? How will you keep yourself motivated? How can I keep you motivated? Questions like that. This can be where you are at a place we've explored the options, and now let's commit. Let's double down on one of these, and let's talk about tactically sort of what we can expect in terms of next steps, in terms of timing, and what support looks like. Okay. Any questions with GROW? Okay. So as you remember the word GROW, right? Goal, reality, options, and will. Those are the 4 words to remember. Okay. All right, so we're back to this quote and back to the sentiment. It matters because so many of us, our intentions are there, our preparation, our thought, our care is there, but our ability to really effectively influence other people's behaviors and offer advice and then them not take it, that is the reality. We all experience, and from that, some frustration when with the best effort and best intention, and we know it's in the best interest of clients, they still don't take the advice or take the recommendations. So that is why it matters. We want to move away from and up that 20%, right? We want more of our clients to take what it is that we're bringing to them because we know that it is in their best interest. Just a reminder of the 50-20-20 there. And this slide, what it really is meant to visualize for you all is, a plan is just a plan, right? You need the coaching, and that really is the ignition, the fire, the engine that takes the plan from an idea, the ideation, to execution. That bridges the gap. And that's why coaching matters. That's why the 3 C's matter. That's why having a method, a methodology to conversations really matters. Okay. It's important to know how you're measuring success and know and be on the same page with each and every client. So here are just some bullets to highlight some considerations that may be outside of the normal way that we measure success in this dynamic and industry. But I think the message and what I'd like you to take away here is have that conversation with the client. Like, how are we going to measure success of this relationship? right? Hear what they have to say, begin with their ideas around that, and then you share, here are some things that for me as your financial advisor are really important, and they are success metrics or KPIs, however you want to phrase it. These are the things that are really important that I want to be able to say I have done for you. Here are just some, a slide that's meant to sort of highlight market dependent success measures on the left-hand side, and then looking at that as a spectrum to relationship dependent metrics and some of the things that and qualities and ways that you could articulate back to Eric's opening point around sort of your brand and your messaging. Here are some of the things that words and terms that you could use to sort of trigger concise messaging around your brand. And here, this is a slide that has a lot of meat to it. What I'd like to say is sort of the Goldilocks approach. Again, I am not recommending seismic shifts to your practice and you need to reinvent your practice or yourself. There can be very slight changes that are made depending on how this resonates and how this fits for you and sort of your level of comfort. I would say, look at the far left-hand side, right? And focus on that from this point on. That's the fundamental, right? So situations to incorporate the 3 C's. And that is just as simply like, can I show up a little less distracted to the next meeting with a client and ask a different question or ask something in a new way, right? Just slight tweaks and changes to how you're showing up conversationally. That's a starting point. Nothing profound and seismic there, but that slight change can reveal incredible insights about where your client is, what's important to them, what they value, what they expect of you, et cetera, et cetera. I also would highly recommend trying the GROW model and conversationally, like just looking at and beginning with what are your goals? Where are we starting from? What are some of the options to get you to set goals? And what are we willing to commit to? What are you willing to commit to? And based off of that, how can I help? Right? That's very simply put an application of that GROW method. It can be important to put a little science into your practice, and have a balance of art and science. Okay. Creating more meaningful connections that lead to financial plan implementation. That's what we're really looking to accomplish, going back to those slides that you've seen now twice. That's what we're really looking to accomplish with implementing coaching and this sort of next wave of advice and differentiation. That's that second bullet. That's the other piece of it, right? Really differentiating and bringing value that robo-advising and digital platforms just cannot and never will be able to do. A few other highlights here. It's about, connecting with clients. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Be courageous and take a stab at using a few of these things introduced through the previous slides. We have a variety of resources available to you all. A playbook. We have actually a hard card that goes through the GROW. It's only and all about the GROW model and has some prompts for you all to help you prepare for certain conversations. As mentioned, we have the financial behavioral assessment, a guide, and also a presentation around that, which goes through back to that question of, what was in your home and household of origin client, what was the tone around money? It can take people sort of back to that question and then is a nice springboard to look at specific behaviors like, are you a spender, saver? Are you fascinated by markets? Or do you feel obligated to know things about financial markets? Again, that assessment can be really helpful for client interactions and conversations. So here are some directives for you all. I would highly encourage you to identify 3 clients that you would like to try the GROW model, that you'd like to, bring in the 3 C's of coaching to that conversation. And maybe it's not next week, maybe it's later today or this week. The sooner the better. You can use this information because it's fresh. And then another plug to the financial behavioral assessment, and a few other things that may be of interest to you all. Eric and I are here for you, should you want to go deeper into any of this. And then another plug and our disclosure slide. So I have 4 minutes before we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and would love to hear from you all. And Eric, I saw you come off of mute.
Yeah, I was just going to thank you, Emily, for the content. Always helpful information. I'll put up our contact information for everyone to reference. I would say of all the information that Emily shared, a few takeaways from me is the crux of all of this is to make meaningful connections and leave lasting impressions with your clients, because people make decisions based on emotion, right? When you go into a car dealership, when you go into Best Buy, they're kind of playing on those emotions. So logic makes you think, but emotion makes you act. And a lot of the times you're trying to tie their financial decision into some emotion. So some of the content that Emily shared, including the GROW content, we have frameworks built around that I'm going to follow up with, as well as a playbook to put some of this content into action. So I'll send an email out to the group after the meeting today.
Thanks, Eric. Are there any questions or things that I can clarify? Are there any insights anyone would like to share?
I just want to say I thought it was a great presentation. Makes you think a lot. I know we have a few people on the. I just wanted to throw out there that Premier as a group or here at the OSJ level actually works with the coach itself, and I know that's really helped us. In our business ventures this year. And I know when I talked to Colleen Bell at our annual meeting, for those of you that weren't there, one question I asked her for the group was, what are the top offices at Cambridge doing, to kind of take their practice to the next level? And one thing she specifically mentioned was working with the coach. So, whether it's you, the advisor, coaching your client, or receiving coaching from another individual, looking at your business from with an outside perspective, I think it's definitely an interesting topic to look at this point. I know it's helped us. I just wanted to throw that out there.
So, you're reminding me, Sebastian, earlier in the presentation, I talked about like the yoga and like tore my ACL and went into the yoga class, right? And, with that story, I think that as I became a yoga teacher, I didn't invent downward facing dog, right? For those of you that practice yoga, right? And when I became a teacher, it was like, I'm not developing any new yoga postures. Nobody's coming to my class for that. They're coming to my class because I am who I am, right? And I'm infusing my teaching and my approach with Emily. You are your biggest differentiator in this industry. Right. And so you have to be really clear about who you are and how you are different, and really leaning into who that person is to really effectively differentiate. That's why people work with you. Mark, you came off of mute.
Yeah, no, Emily, I can't agree with you more. I think your presentation is fantastic. I'm a big fan of everything you said today. And I completely agree, and I've read other material too that said this is very much what the future of advice looks like. So I think it's very timely. I think it's really well done. Eric, thank you for teeing this up. Yeah, great stuff.
Thanks, Mark.
And I'll just close out before I hand it back over to Sebastian to say, if it doesn't work with the first client engagement, just continue to pump the pump.
Words to live by, right? Words to live by.
Well done, Eric. High five on that.
I can't top that. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Emily. Great presentation. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. As I mentioned, Eric works with advisors in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. I know not everybody on the call is from one of those two states, but I'm sure he'd be happy to set you up with one of his colleagues. We use T. Rowe Price funds here. Mark and I are happy to talk to you about that. Josh as well. And if we can connect you with Eric, all the better. So with that, I'll let everybody go for today. And thanks again to Emily and Eric.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone. Have a great day.
Take care.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.